Yes, sir.
I want to, although I agree with the broad outline of what you're trying to do with the four things that the business should do to operate in the spirit of Caritas, I want to challenge your 4-point model with a 3-point model.
Okay.
I was with you on the first two, that the value of the product and taking care of your people, your employees. But then you went to suppliers. I thought that was an interesting and new idea, and I'm still contemplating that. But then going to the community, because I've always thought of it as the first two plus then taking care of your customers and conceiving of it in that way. Now, maybe you include that with the product?
Well, I do, yes.
But
Yeah.
it seems to me that if you are producing a product that has genuine value and you're paying attention to high quality, and if you're taking care of your people, your employees, and you are trying to satisfy your customers, not only are you going to be successful in a business sense, profits, but you will in fact then be giving that value to the community represented by their buying your product.
Yes, yes. I think the customer actually falls into two classes. He's part of the part of the product, and there's a whole literature on how you include the customer in the product development process, and not in an exploitative way. But he's also part of the community that you're dealing with. So the customer occupies a complex position within, the mechanics of implementing social justice, of building up this civilization of love. So, but the other point, the community is the physical location where you are, and you have to have a relationship there. But it's also that set of government relations. Mm-hmm. And that gets very, very dicey in today's world. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, sir.
That's where you've got to have all those things intertwined. You've got to have the justice, you've got to have the truth. It's a partnership between the customer and the vendor. Mm-hmm. Okay? And where I saw it really abused, mm-hmm. because I wasn't a victim of it, because I didn't let myself get large enough so that my shop was taken over predominantly by the applied materials and the GEs of the world, okay? Mm-hmm. Because they're gutless, they're ruthless, and they're evil in so many instances. They'll come in and they'll make deals with you, and not just verbal. They'll make written contracts, and then they'll break them, and they'll come to you and they'll say, well, tough, what are you going to do? We'll never buy from you again. I saw them put so many people out of business. It's pathetic. Okay?
Yeah. Well, we're going to put you down as undecided. But no, I think you'll find that the problem with resolving everything by contract is that contract negotiations are always a matter of power, not justice. And where you have what's called a leonine contract, a contract where there's so much power on one side, the truth is there is no real negotiation and there's no real enforcement. Because the costs of enforcing a leonine contract, even if you negotiate a just contract and they violate it, they told you the truth. So what? Take us to court. We don't care. Why? It's just one little small, crushing you is just a small expense.
Because they've got the philosophy that there's an inexhaustible amount of vendors out there. That's their attitude.
Well, there are until you keep crushing them.
Yeah, until they get into trouble. Then someday they get into trouble. And I saw that happen.
Well, that's what the government is for.
Yeah, but you know what happens?
Your tax dollars at work.
Yeah, but then another management team comes in because those guys are gone, the ones that make the lousy decisions. So then a new set of guys comes in.
Yeah, but they're gone, but they're rich. Yeah. Yes, sir.
That brings up an interesting point. There's kind of part and parcel to our current economic and even political structures as they stand. When somebody makes a mistake, they tend to be gone from their position. And I was wondering, I mean, a CEO messes up or whatever, the headlines are all, is he going to step down, will he step down, things like that. And I'm wondering how that plays into an economy of gift and, trying to do things like that. Is that more amenable to accepting mistakes on the part of managers and, getting over it?
Yeah. I would, of course, there are practical issues of growth, forgiveness, and all of those things. However, I think what you're saying applies mainly to managers, that is, to people who really work at management. It doesn't apply to these Uber managers because they tend to isolate themselves. Who suffered in the, what top manager suffered in the recent financial meltdown? They all have the same management positions they had before they collected all of these trillions of dollars in either in actual money or guarantees from the government. They don't pay for their mistakes. Now, the precondition of forgiveness is that there's a possibility of paying for your mistakes. When the government covers up your mistakes, then the whole process of forgiveness, and of learning, I might say, is short-circuited. So there's no forgiveness here. There's getting away with it, which is not the same thing. So it's only the managers who have to actually take any real responsibility. Yes, ma'am.
You discuss how the big corporations and the small and medium enterprises operate or not operate within the civilization of love. But for a majority of us who are ordinary employees and for all of us who are customers, how do we operate within that civilization of love?
This is an excellent question. I've been taking this, in this discussion, I've been taking it from the standpoint of owners and managers and et cetera. But what about from the standpoint of the employee? And that's a question that needs a whole another speech. But the employee, of course, we're talking about mutual obligation. So the employee has obligation to perform in good faith. The reason I took it from the standpoint of management is because even for the employee to get in a position where he can make his full contribution, his or her full contribution, the modern corporation is just a bad structure for that. And so the employee is frequently bound down and limited by a philosophy that sees work as a disutility, as something we don't want to do, as something we have to be forced to do. But it's not true. Most people love to work. And I mean, a man will come home from a hard day's work, and what'll he do? He goes down to the basement to work at his hobby, or he goes out into the garden and starts pulling weeds, People love to work. They love to contribute. What they don't like is useless toil. They don't like to be exploited. They don't like mindless labor. And they don't like conditions which sort of do not recognize their work. So managers, and Adam Smith said this, said if managers really understood workers, their big problem would be to keep them from working too hard, rather than encouraging them to, having to encourage them to work with threats. Employees have right of association, but these associations have to be directed toward not just the good of the employee, but the good of the common good. Too often, the union movements were self-destructive. That is, they made such unreasonable demands. I mean, the automotive pacts of the 70s and 80s were more like mutual suicide pacts, rather than directed toward the common good.